Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Jamaicans Studying Abroad. I am Tracy Ann Mullings, the social media community and content manager here at Jamaicans.com. And today we're talking with Davia Willis, who is studying abroad in New York. Welcome, Davia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So we're gonna get into a little bit of your business today. We're gonna find out what you're studying in New York, what kind of pushed you to make that move, and a little bit about your experience that you've been having so far. All right?
Wonderful.
Okay, perfect. So first things first, can you tell us a little bit about your Jamaican background? Did you grow up in Jamaica? And if so, which high school did you attend?
So I was born at the Spanish Town Hospital, so Spain Town. I was born and raised in Spanish Town. I went to Angels Primary where I passed GSAT at the time. I went to the Dental Technical High School. So that's where I completed high school and also did sixth form there as well.
All right, and
Big
what
up
was
St.
your
Catherine.
big up St. Catherine? Yes, I am a Portmore girl, so big up St. Catherine as well. Far when you're going to school in Kingston, because I went to school in Kingston, but yeah,
Mm,
big up St. Catherine same way. So you did a lot of your schooling here, prep school, primary school, sorry, and high school. So what made you decide to, go outside of the shores of Jamaica for tertiary education?
Good question. So my mom was abroad and I was visiting her during the breaks that we had with school. And so in visiting her, I realized that the dynamic where culture and education was in New York, it was so different from Jamaica. And I was like, in an attempt to broaden my span of knowledge, broaden my span of experience, I decided that I wanted to pursue my tertiary education here. So I wanted to come to college in New York.
Okay, and which school do you attend in New York right now?
Currently, I go to John Jay College of Criminal Justice.
Oh, wait a minute. We never know there's so far we are going with this. I like that. What was the application process like for a school like that?
So initially, I applied directly to John Jay when I was in Jamaica, but I didn't get in at the time. But as Jamaicans, we're trained that when one door closes, another opens. And so whenever we
Absolutely.
see an obstacle, we find a way around it. So what happened was that I realized that the City University of New York, we call it CUNY, it
Mhm.
encompassed 25 different campuses, of which John Jay is one of the colleges. So when I applied and I didn't get in, they were nice enough to say to me, hey, if you apply to one of these community colleges, it has a pathway directly back into John Jay. So what I
Oh,
did, I applied to all the community colleges doing one application, which was really nice because then, financially, I was just paying one fee for five different applications. So that was really good. And I applied for the community colleges, got into all of them, thankfully. And then I had to make
yeah.
that decision of which I would go to. So then, suffice to say, I went to Queensborough Community College, where I graduated last year, actually, with my associates in criminal justice. And then I started John Jay the Monday right after I graduated.
So you had no breaks, none at all, just school
No
to
breaks at
school.
all. None at all.
Oh my God. So why did you choose the field of criminal justice though? Like it's pretty exciting. I wanted to be a lawyer at one point in my life, but it does never work out for me like that. But so tell me, why did you choose that field?
So at first, it wasn't a field that I wanted. I wanted to be a teacher, but full transparency, when I was trying to help my little brother with his homeworks back in the day, I realized that I really didn't have the patience.
You know,
So I'm just being honest. I didn't have the patience for teaching. So I was like, I can't do this. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. But then I realized growing up, I would watch a lot of legal movies with my dad because he too wanted to be a lawyer, but
right.
that wasn't in the books for him, unfortunately. So we would watch a lot of legal shows, and then I realized that my persona gravitated towards that of the legal field. So I was like, But I was still in school, so I felt like I still had time to decide on what I wanted. So the older I got, I realized that the legal field is where I really wanted to be. And so I decided to pursue that avenue.
Oh, nice. That's a great little story. I love that. But are there like specific fields within criminal justice that you would be studying, or is it more broad? Like, give us a little bit more about that.
So, with my degree, it's very broad and I like it that way because it fits into anything. But essentially, I want to be a lawyer at one point. I wanted to also be a detective. I'm one of those persons that the moment something speaks to me, I'm willing to test the waters. So, I wanted to be a detective. And then I decided that, you know what, I'm just going to focus on being a lawyer. But with criminal justice, I didn't choose any concentrations. I just chose the broad field because that way if I decide tomorrow that, oh, I don't want to be a lawyer, I might just want to be a police officer, it's easy for me to still navigate within the field of that.
Okay, so criminal justice gives you that in, and then once you get in there, you can decide what it is that you want to do when you get to that point.
Right, right,
Okay, lovely. And as we mentioned before, you are in New York. Now, we know that New
right,
York is very different from Yad. So, what was your first impression when you arrived in New York as a student? Because, I mean, you said you were visiting your mom before, but as a
right.
student, I suspect it would be a little bit different. Was there anything that surprised you?
The dynamics of education here, I realized that there was always this stigma that international students or any form of students that comes from the Caribbean, their attitude towards their academics is different from those that reside or live here. And so I found that I too was one of those students that when I came here, my English was strong, my attitude towards my academics was very serious. But then the way that the school functions was just not the same as in Jamaica. It was very relaxed. There were professors that I encountered where you set your own deadlines. And I was like,
Mhm.
this is so new. And then the overall face value effect of wearing casual clothes to schools. I was so used to wearing uniforms that it was so difficult because I'm like, what am I going to wear to school today? Like, how do I look today? I would have rather to just be wearing uniforms. And I remembered when I had just gotten accepted into Queensborough and I wanted to know more about the school, I sent an email to the advisor asking, do we wear uniforms or do we wear casual clothes? And he was like, you wear whatever makes you comfortable. And makes you comfortable was really the definition when I got here. Cause like some of the uniforms that I saw, well, the clothing that I saw was very not schooly at all. So that was a very astounding realization when I got here.
Yeah, New York is filled with a lot of free spirits and people who are
Yeah,
just doing whatever they feel like doing. So I imagine it would be an adjustment in terms of, what you'd wear and all the things that you'd put yourself together with for your day to day. That's such an interesting experience though, right? Because at home, yeah, when we're here in Jamaica, yes, we dress up when we're going out casually, but then to be
right,
doing that every single day and then some of
right.
the type of outfits that you would see, I'm sure it was quite an adjustment for you.
It was.
Okay. So aside from the clothing and just the fact that, there is a lot of there's a lot more freedom that goes
Mhm.
into this kind of schooling. What are some of the biggest cultural differences that you see that you've had to kind of adjust yourself to, looking back between Jamaica and New York?
So, to sum that all up, the entire concept of diversity was just something that I struggled with when I got here because you know how in Jamaica we kind of have this umbrella governance where society is concerned. In New York, the social construct is not the same. There's a lot of different views, there's a lot of different auras, there's a lot of different traditions. And so, coming here from the Caribbean, I guess what saved me, so to say, is the advice that my dad gave me, which was to be open minded. And I feel like the moment I got off the plane in August 2022 as a student, I was just open minded. And so it wasn't a case where I was just open to anything because I had my personal values and beliefs, but it wasn't a case where I was going to project that Caribbean aura onto everyone that I met. And so when I met different individuals, it was kind of an interpretation clash. There was this enunciation clash as well because for example, I was conversing with someone that's from the Middle East and their aura was just very dominant. And I was like, I feel like you're coming at me with an attitude So I feel like we kind of need to, dial it back a bit. But then getting to know the person, at first I was so back and forth with the person. I got involved in student government. And so in leadership, I found that we could just not get on the same page. But then having had that one-on-one interaction with him, getting to know where he's from, having him know where I'm from, that was when I was able to bridge that gap and be able to move forward with them. So I feel like the whole entire concept of diversity was just that big challenge for me when I got here.
You know what's funny when you say that? When you say that you felt like the person was coming at you, what's funny is that for us as Jamaicans, there are a lot of people who think we are coming at them when we talk,
Right,
right? So it's actually really funny that not funny, haha, but funny like ironic in terms of the fact that you would have that experience with somebody from such a different culture as we are, and
right.
so that's an interesting experience that you've had. You mentioned being in student leadership. How has that been going for you?
So student leadership has been very interesting. I must say that when I was at Dental, I was involved in student council, but the idea of student government here is definitely not the same as student council at Dental. Here, you're literally speaking on behalf of thousands, hundreds of students, and that was a pivotal moment of my journey here as a student because I feel like my identity was challenged at that point because then when
Mm,
I became the president of student government at Queensborough, I was now the spokesperson, the advocate for everyone, no matter who you were, no matter what you believe, no matter where
right.
you're from. I was your advocate. And so at that point, I felt like my identity was being challenged. I feel like I was conforming. I felt like I was because I wanted to be so inclusive that there were times when I bought these cultural clothing to go to their events and stuff like that because I wanted to be that cool president, and I
Yeah.
wanted to learn about your culture. So at that point, I felt like I wasn't no longer Davia. I started conforming to people calling me Davia when that wasn't the real pronunciation of
Ah.
my name. So in that moment, I had to learn how to not just be the cool leader, but to be a leader and still centralize who I was. And
Mm-hmm.
so leadership has been really amazing. It has opened opportunities for me. It has opened doors, having me meet persons like the mayor for New York City. I had the
Nice.
opportunity to be in his audience. And so the other day, recently, just a few days ago, I was in Albany with the student senate and I was in the audience of the governor for New
No
York.
money outside.
So outside. And so that it has been really cool. Advocacy here is really important. Came to realize. And so when you say student leadership, you're speaking on behalf of not just students that are my age. I'm speaking on behalf of students that could be my parents. So it
Mm-hmm.
has been really interesting.
Oh, I love that for you. It sounds like you're getting quite the college experience, right? Because you mentioned that, high school was so different from what you're experiencing now. And I mean, nobody really taught us as young people what to expect when we go to
Right.
university. It's really just
Agreed.
kind of a figure it out as you go type of thing. But so far, it sounds like you're figuring it out really well. So kudos to you.
Tried. Thank you.
Do you have like a community of Jamaican or Caribbean people? Have you found anybody that you kind of, use to create your own little community so you can keep a piece of home going for you?
I must say that at first I didn't. I did only have one Jamaican friend, and funny joke, I met him during the student senate. We reconnected because we went to the same primary school, but then we got separated when he went to Jago, I went to Dinto, and then we met up back in New York through
Mm,
student leadership. So it was really
meant
cool
to
having him
be.
in my corner. And I remember in 2023 for the Student Senate, and just a little backstory, the Student Senate is basically the highest level of student advocacy. So the Student Senate represents all 25 campuses that falls under CUNY within New York City. So I remember I was running for vice chair for international student affairs, where my advocacy is primarily based on international students and undocumented students. And I was having doubts because I'm like, the only two Jamaican kids here is me and this young man. And I was not sure how to go about it, but having him there reminding me of what it is to be a Jamaican, being little but being Talawa in a space like that, that was really cool. And so, having had that experience after I secured my position, thankfully, I tried to ensure that I created that room where I could say, okay, these are my people. But then the reality is that when we come here after a while, our identity becomes embodied into diversity and not so much of being a Jamaican. We don't say we're Jamaican until it's convenient. And I observed that and I was very displeased at it. So I decided to get this little Jamaican lapel. So everywhere I went, persons knew I was a Jamaican. And so tried forming a group, but it wasn't really working the way that I wanted it to work. And so I just tried to pursue diversity, just try to meet people from different way. And I realized that that was how I was able to navigate, not by primarily finding my people, but just by finding people to help
Mm.
move me around.
Okay, that's great. I know sometimes that it can be a little tricky moving to an entirely new space when you don't have
Yeah,
a lot of people or things or experiences to remind you of home.
yeah.
So that it's really interesting that you were able to buck up on this friend that you
Right?
know from primary school, right? Like
Right?
that's just divine alignment, in my opinion. Is that
I
it was meant,
agree.
yeah, it was meant. You both of you were meant to probably just guide each other through this experience, because the separation between primary school, high school, that's what 7 years thereabout,
Yeah.
and then plus you did that you did your first year in community college, and
Mm-hmm.
then now back in university is when you're both meeting up and forming this bond. So yeah, I would say that that's a great support system to have already. And I love that you
Agree.
decided to put the Jamaican flag on your shirt, because listen, we'll have to represent everywhere we go, don't it?
Always, right? Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So aside from, having this friend that helps you with your community and the lapel that you have on your shirt, is there anything else that you do, maybe on a day-to-day or a weekly or however often, that you do to stay connected to your Jamaican roots while you're abroad?
Music. Music is everything. Music, I feel like music has been my best friend. I often express myself with music. So music, and I try to ensure that I eat as many Jamaican cuisine as I can.
Right.
And ever so often, once there's a break, I'm normally in Jamaica. So I try to go home as often, especially after I had that identity crisis. I
Mm-hmm.
went home, I went home in Christmas for the Christmas break in 2023. And after that, I realized that it would be essential for me to travel as often as I can. So that's what I did.
Okay, perfect. So you're traveling, you're maintaining your friendships, you are, representing visually through and through. But you
Through and through.
mentioned music, right? So I'm going to dig a little bit into that. Can you give me like two of your favorite Jamaican artists right now?
So I'm a reggae girl at heart.
Right?
So primarily every morning you would either hear me listening to Chronix or you will hear me listening to Dennis Brown.
Mm,
It's one of my
I need some
faves.
Dennis Brown. Dennis Brown. What you know about some Dennis Brown? What you know about
Girl,
that?
I grew up on Dennis Brown and
Yeah?
Gregory Isaacs and all of those people.
Oh,
My
love
granddad
that.
was a big reggae man.
Yeah, I love that. I find sometimes that the young people don't really appreciate the reggae like one time. I mean,
Oh,
reggae now is different from it was back in the day, but to hear you say names like Dennis Brown, oh, love that.
yeah, I'm a oldie. I always tell people I'm very young, but my soul is very old.
Oh, that's me too. I feel like an old soul sometimes, because
Right?
like sometimes I know the new stuff's up, I know that, but
Yeah,
sometimes it just kind of doesn't hit as well as the oldies do when you can't vibe to it the same,
right. I
right?
agree. I share the same sentiment, but that's just how it is, and that's how society will continue to evolve.
Yeah, unfortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you
Yeah,
ask. But I mean, I guess we just have to roll with the punches in terms of music. I mean, in terms of globalization and all that, the music is going to change.
yeah,
And we just have to, if we like it, we like it. If we don't like it, we just keep listening to what we listen to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish you knew about New York before moving there?
So really, I wish I had known that scholarships and financial assistance was not privy to international students. I mean,
Mm,
I know that outside students don't really get much sponsorship, but in New York City, I realized that we really don't get financial assistance. And so I wish I had known that because I would have set up myself better before
mm-hmm.
transitioning here. So
Okay.
that's one of the main things I wish I'd known.
So, on the heels of that, which leads perfectly into our last question, is there any advice that you have for other young Jamaicans thinking to study in New York or just overseas in general? Because um, that you just mentioned, in terms of financial assistance, that's a big deal because
Mhm.
yes, it's expensive locally, to go to university, but it's also super expensive to do that in the States. So aside from, making sure that you are set up yourself financially or at least try to figure out a way to make the money to pay the school fee, what other advice do you say you'd have for other young Jamaicans looking to do what you're doing?
I would definitely pass along the advice my dad gave me, which is be open-minded. When
Mm,
you go out there, remember that once, yes, you're going to represent where you're from and proudly too, but at the same time, remember that you're going into a different environment. And
different
there's this saying that
space.
say, when you go to Rome, do as the Romans do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff that goes contrary to what we believe in our society, but at the same time, try to ensure that you're not doing outside of that societal norm. So I would definitely extend that advice. Be open minded, be willing to challenge yourself, be willing to try new things. Every day, there is something else that challenges my comfort zone, but it's not necessarily because they come, but because I put myself out there. I didn't get to be in the audience of the mayor and the governor and getting to go to DC and all these opportunities that I was privy to because I was silent and I was in the corner. I got
Mm,
it from being outspoken and putting myself in the way to say, hey, try me. Here I am. This is what I'm good at. So once you have a skill, make it useful. For me, public speaking seems to be one of my good talents. And so I use that, and that has opened doors for me. The Bible does tells us that our gifts make room for us. And so, whatever your gift is, take it
exactly.
with you when you go along and watch it make room for you. That would be my advice.
That's such amazing advice. I wish somebody did tell me that when me did I go university. But yeah,
Sometimes, my dad taught me that we pay to learn, and there's a lot of stuff that I learned not because it was said to me, but because one way or another I had to pay to learn these things.
mm, and it sounds like you've had such diverse experiences, even for somebody who's fairly young. So I'm really wishing you all the best on your journey here. I think
Thank you.
just based on this short conversation that we're having, it sounds like you're already so focused on what it is that you want to do, and you're already so driven. So, Davia, thank you so much for talking to us today, and congrats on getting into the school that you wanted to go to, and all the best on completing your program. I'm so excited for you, and I'm also excited to see, how it goes for you and what you do when you're done. I think you'll
Me
have a
and you both.
great time. I think you'll have a great time and maintain your community as much as possible, maintain your identity as much as possible. You are Jamaican through and through, and you've already made us proud just by getting to where you are.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, Tracy, and I'll continue to make Jamaica proud as best as I can.
I love that. Thank you, Davia Willis.